So hello and welcome to this episode of In Conversation with Reason to Be. I'm Aurea Fellows and I'm joined again by my colleague Keith Goddard. This is the third of a series of podcasts that we've been doing all around habits and behaviour change. And so far we've explored the behaviours and the rewards parts of the habit loop and the importance of picking really specific behaviours and looking at the rewards that we can use to support behaviour change. But what we haven't covered so far is the whole aspect of cues, which is really important because they are where it sort of all begins, if you like. So should we dig into that a bit more now, Keith, in terms of why cues are so important?
Yeah, I think this is the odd bit because we're doing this last on the podcast, but it's the first thing in our behaviour that's the key. So cues are your triggering event. It's the thing your brain recognises to tell you to behave in a certain way. So, the importance of that is making it simple and clear and obvious. And we're surrounded by these things in life. So red traffic lights, big words saying stop at a stop junction. All of those things we are trained to recognise and to do something about. So that they need to be obvious and clear. There's a general, acceptance that cues sit in a number of typical types. So we've got location cues. So that could be the toilet, it could be the bedroom, it could be in your car, it could be at a road junction. So a location. It could be at the pool on holiday. We've got time as a cue. So that could be what I would call an episodic time. So getting out of bed, or a specific time, 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, lunchtime, tea time. But it's a point in time or an act that is anchored to a particular time. There's then people. So who are you with at a particular time that would cue or trigger a type of behaviour? So we can think about this as an example of when you're at work, when you're at home with the other half, if you've got another half, when you're with your children, when you're with this type of friend, when you're with people that you do hobbies with. So all of those different types of people might cue a different behaviour. There's an immediately preceding action. So what do you do before your behaviour that would trigger the behaviour? Before you put your running shoes on in the morning to go running, what do you do? Or before you go running out of the door, what do you do? So for me, I have a glass of water before I go running. Preceding action that actually triggers the act of running, I guess. And the final one is emotion. So a specific motion that would trigger a certain type of behaviour that you've chosen to do. So I guess for me, if I draw two examples, and then I'll ask Aurea to give her some of her examples. So the use of people and time I'm going to talk about. So I guess for me, I live in an area where we've got a few neighbours, but we don't often see them. So therefore, we don't really know what they're doing. We're not in each other's faces. So for me, when I see one of my neighbours, even if I'm busy walking to and from somewhere, by seeing them, I will stop and ask them what they're doing, how they're getting on, because I want to keep in touch with them. I want to be informed. I want to know how they're doing. So by seeing somebody, that triggers me asking the series of questions, and the reward I'm getting from that and the craving is understanding how my neighbour's getting on with, because I like them and I want to know, and I don't see them that often. But just by seeing them, I could actually just say hello, walk past, because I'm in a rush. I think for me as well, around the desire to be close to people is I put people's name in my diary that flashes up when it's the birthday, when it's the child's birthday, when there's a commemorative event, but I use their name. So I may not bump into them to cue the behaviour, but what I do is get my diary to cue their little emoji or their person to cue the behaviour. So that's around the people stuff. In terms of the time, I think for me, I think two things that land for me is, what do I do when I get out of bed? So that's a particular time. And I have certain things that I like to do in the morning, and some of which are absolutely time bound. So if I'm not up by 7 o'clock and I'm looking at the clock, then I'm sort of thinking, I need to do something about that. But I think for me, time is more relevant on an evening. So what I do is the act of, before I go to bed at a particular time, I'll listen to 3 or 4 songs because I want to go to bed happy, in a pleasant mood. So just a couple of examples to do that. And I guess around time as well, outside of a specific time, I use my Apple Watch quite a lot to cue a certain behavior. So, I sit down quite a lot behind a desk. So for me, just standing up more, moving more is a desired behavior to feel better about myself and to be physically well. I use my Apple Watch and I just let it run to tell me when I should be standing up. Clearly, that might not be useful to people that don't like their watches telling them what to do. Aurea, I don't know whether you've got any examples of other cues that might be useful.
Yeah, well, I thought I might just build on that, because I was thinking about location as a cue that you touched on there, because I think there are things where when we reliably every day find ourselves in the same place, we can use those things to cue. So it might be that if you have a walk from home to a bus stop, there might be things that you could do en route in that, to the bus stop. There might be things that you do at the bus stop. So I was thinking about if you wanted to do a bit of mindfulness, or there was something in terms of catching up with people socially, you might use that time to have a phone call, or to drop some text to people. Or similarly, if you're someone that regularly is in their car, I know either at a certain sort of time of day because you commute, or just because you're someone who does a lot of travel in your day, there might be the location of being in a car that you could use as a trigger for certain things that you want to be doing regularly, that you can do on the move. I mean, one of the things that stands out for me personally was I used to use my desk at work when I was in an office environment where I was always at the same place, quite a lot of days of the week. I used to have a water bottle, and so it was on the edge of my desk. One of the first things I saw when I came in the morning. So I used to fill up my 1.5 litre bottle, and then every time I came back to my desk during the day after I'd been to meetings or whatever it might be, it was a visual reminder in that place to, have I been drinking today? Have I drunk enough? How far through my 1.5 litres have I managed to get? That kind of thing. So I think location, as long as it's reliable, in terms of you being there a lot of the time, can work really well. And the other things I was thinking about were more some of those immediately preceding action stuff that you were talking about. Because if it's something that you always do, like potentially brushing your teeth, then to do something after that is an easy way to sort of remember it. I mean, I think the key is not to try and break into an existing routine. So if you're someone who just brushes their teeth, then that would really work. But if you brush your teeth and then you do mouthwash and then you floss, you need to sort of wait till you've done all of the teeth cleaning activities before you try and put something else in. Otherwise, you're getting in the way of an existing kind of preset routine. But you could do it very easily in terms of things like, if you walk, every time you walk through a door, you could do a couple of belly breaths. That would be just a very easy action, which whenever it occurs in your day, wouldn't have to be at a set time. I know that, certain things like maybe after you've eaten, as you said, at lunchtime, or, the actual act rather than the time, because it might be varied, is a good time. Certainly I know when I've tried to get into a good routine around taking supplements, particularly those that need to be taken with food, having the meal as the trigger was the thing that enabled me for it to become habitual, because once I'd eaten, it was kind of like, oh, right, now we need to take these couple of supplements. So I think it's all about picking on things that are part of your regular routine, or that in your immediate environment. So on a daily basis, you can have them trigger that thing you want it to be automatic. But the other thing that you touched on there was emotions as a cue as well, Keith. So How would you work with those as cues, because they might be a bit different?
Yeah, I mean, emotions is a bit of an odd one for new habits, but I think it's quite powerful because emotion's clearly evocative and emotional. Um, it comes with a weight. So I think my standpoint is there's no right and wrong with emotions. So I guess one of the things to think about in terms of a behaviour or routine is how do you want to feel, or what do you want to do? And sometimes it's using the emotion that would trigger that. Um, so I guess for me, there's a little bit around. I mean, if I use the example of frustration and extreme anger, I guess. Um, so it's asking yourself, the question is, how do I want to be? How do I want to feel? Um, as in when I feel frustrated and angry. So what you're trying to do is to get a positive new behaviour around current emotion. So you can do it that way. To extend that, if you had the aspiration, look, I just want to be kind to people, to be more pleasant, then actually what you can do is to think about, right, when I feel frustrated, this is what I'm going to do differently, or this is what I'm going to do. So I guess one of the challenges is it a new behavior, or is it trying to change? For me, I would just think it's a new behavior because I want to actually feel calmer and be calmer and allow my brain to function as much as I can. And when I get frustrated, if I take 6 belly breaths, deep breathing, that actually is the behavior I want when I feel frustrated. And that actually achieves the aim of actually allowing myself to think clearly, be kinder to people. So you get from that a whole cycle that actually the trigger is when I feel frustrated, this is what I want to do. Um, and I think the very practical thing about the triggering effect in the instance of some of our behaviours is if you choose to take 6 belly breaths when you feel frustrated, that is a very practical thing you can do. And interestingly, your immediate reward is you feel calmer. And your craving could be around, actually, do you know what, I just feel calmer generally in myself, and I know I'm being gentler and less bitey with people. So that could be the craving. So that would be an example of actually using an emotion as a trigger to a positive behaviour you want going forward, if that helps people.
Yeah, so if we were going to sort of start wrapping up, it sounds to me like we've said in relation to new habits, we need to pick something as a cue that's noticeable, that's very salient for us. Maybe we can piggyback off a behaviour that we are already in our existing routine, like we always get up, we always do our teeth, or we're inserting a new cue, we're inserting something that was very easy for us to spot and to have as a trigger. And like we talked about when we talked about rewards, we probably need to experiment with the things that are most relevant, most salient for us, that we will spot. Um, but when it comes to changing perhaps existing habits, we do also need to think about cues perhaps slightly differently, because we need to think about isolating what the cue is for the thing that we are perhaps trying to do less of or not have triggered. So we really need to boil it down to understand what is the cue, because one way we know that we can sort of remove behaviours we're less happy about is to get rid of the cue. But we can't do that until we really begin clear on what the cue is. So is it a particular time? Is it a particular action? Is it a particular person? We need to kind of do a little bit of a experiment. We need to be curious and sort of maybe track things for a while to find that out, so we can then take some steps. Or we can then make sure that at that point we are triggered, we've got something alternative that we want to do instead, and we work to replace it. Um,
Yeah,
so I guess there are slightly different things depending on whether it's a completely new habit or it's something that we've already got in our behaviour that we're trying to refine or to do differently.
yeah, and I think the reality of some of this stuff for people is it's probably a combination of both. So there's clearly new behaviour, but actually some old habits that might get in the way. So I think exactly what you said is is trying to extinguish the cues on the old behaviour that you don't want anymore, and trying to crowd the old behaviour out with new behaviour. So for a lot of people, it's going to be a combination. And the reality, what we know about habits is once they're established and ingrained, they don't go away. So things like riding a bike. So once you know how to ride a bike and you're proficient at it, that doesn't go away. But it doesn't mean that you always ride a bike. So some people may go for decades where they've chosen not to deploy the habit of being able to ride a bike. But when you get back on it, you can. If you're used to driving a manual car, getting into an automatic car is quite difficult and quite clumsy, and it's potentially awkward. So you'll never lose the ability to drive a manual, but you need to actually crowd out the manual behaviour, put automatic driving ones in place in order to be proficient. And there'll always be those times when you reach for the clutch. So I think for me there's a clarity around exactly what you said, is getting clarity around what cues will help you actually embed the new behaviours you want, but equally the clarity around extinguishing the old behaviours, making the new ones strong, clear and frequent, and anchoring all of that to why you do it in the first place. And for me, I think, there's just being realistic about some of this stuff. With big behaviour change, you've got to chunk it back down, as we said, into bite-sized chunks. And each of those bite-sized chunks need a cue and a reward around it. Yeah. So I think that for me, hopefully for people, completes this set of how to establish new behaviours, new routines. It's very easy to sort of talk with over 3 podcasts with this type of stuff, but hopefully it gives you top tips. But it's more complex and it does require quite a lot of effort. But I'm hoping people have found this one on cues useful, but equally the other 2 on establishing new behaviours and rewarding those useful as well. So that's us from Conversation with Reason to Be. Thanks, Aurea, for your time and your wisdom and examples, and look forward to seeing you again soon.